Welcome to the front row. I'm your host, Brad Rowe, and this is a space where unfiltered stories of the human condition get told. Pull up a chair.
Yeah. So you go into the military, you go into basic, and what happens there?
Yes, I go into basic training, and on training day 27, they were running a physical fitness exercise, and one kid from my platoon, two other boys, and a girl come into the hospital where I was requesting an inhaler, and they came in wheelchairs, screaming, crying, and I was sitting across the hall from the door where they went into, and all three of them were rushed into old school porcelain tubs full of ice to cool their bodies down, because at that point their brains were boiling at 108 degrees. And shortly thereafter, they all came out in a vegetative state. And I was told by one of the commandants of the Marine Corps that because of the tragedy of today, that I was being sent back home.
So you got a medical discharge just because of the tragedy that happened to someone else, even though the sports-induced asthma you had wasn't really that bad.
Right. An honorable with medical conditions discharge from Paris Island Marine Corps Recruit Depot. And there I was on a bus back to New Hampshire, back home.
Just feeling more rejection, more abandonment, more unworthiness.
Yes. And at that point, I just felt so weak and disappointed, and the shame and the guilt just kept piling on. And I got back home. I had met up with my friend who I was doing cocaine with. He was getting into bodybuilding, and I thought that if I were to just gain strength, gain muscle, and to just get into the best physical shape of my life, that that strength and that power would carry me over everything. You know, the structure of being in the gym, diet, commitment and discipline would carry me over in all facets of my life.
Yeah.
But little did I know that there's a balance between mental, physical, and spiritual. And that I learned later on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, too late.
Yeah.
Well, maybe just in time.
Right. Not too late. Not too late.
Yeah.
So where does that go from here? You've found the gym. You've found, that like fulfilling that ego.
Yes.
From the gym.
Ego was what I ran on. Ego and anger is what fueled me. So where I worked making pizza, I had worked through high school making pizza at a really nice Italian family restaurant that felt like family to me. And, I had met a man there after returning back from basic that was a retired Marine, and he was a retired iron worker, big family of iron workers, legendary iron worker. He built half of Boston with his company, Boston Steel.
Yeah.
And I thought this was another great opportunity for me to prove myself, and, through hard work, because iron workers are tough, and, walking structural steel is scary, and not many can do it. So I thought it was a good opportunity for me to prove myself again and to set a new bar. And, his son had died a few years before that building the emergency wing of Mass General. So getting in there, his other son was a manager of a GM of a crew. And so I was the number one apprentice. You know, I was doing things other apprentices don't do. You know, he was taking me out for lunch and drinking during lunch, and I was only 19 at the time. And he had piles of cocaine and would send me back to the job. And, you know, as the apprentice, you know, I would, you know, look for any way to just be the best that I could around my crew, and, you know, working hard. I'm really good at that and found much validation in that. And after the second year of working in Boston, cameras came into play, and usually no one's above the ironworkers, physically speaking, like on the structure itself. So in those times, ironworkers would drink on the job all day, every day. And we had just started a new project in Alston, and one day, cameras came up and my entire crew got laid off for drinking on the job. So there goes my family, my family, you know, the guys that I spent 80% of my time with, you know, they're all gone. My mentor, within 3 days of getting diagnosed with back cancer, had died. And shortly thereafter, his son, my boss, was laid off for drinking and drugging on the job. And this was right around Christmas. And I'd gotten home from work, and there my friends were just sitting in my dad's condo waiting for me to get home. And they're like, hey, let's go to Florida. So I took off to Florida, partied, found work. Shortly thereafter, we had left. I had just turned 21. Got back home, you know, drank every night. Not much drug use then. You know, I was just experimenting with casual sex. And shortly thereafter, I went back to community college. After a year, I lost complete interest in a liberal arts degree. Lost complete interest. Wanted to party, wanted to have fun, wanted to do what I wanted to do. And college just wasn't it for me at that time. So I had returned home, and I had met up with one of my friend's ex-girlfriends, and it was long enough to where, you know, he didn't mind if I dated her or even was in contact with her. So at that time, she had introduced me to heroin. And, you know, after 3 days of me sniffing heroin, and having sex with her, like in front of my fireplace with like a raging fire, you know, I was 21, and eventually she introduced me to intravenous use. It was that was very brief. She had took off. I had lost contact with her, and I was frustrated that she had left, but, you know, she was in a full-blown addiction. And so my life carried on. I had stopped using heroin and most all drugs for that matter. The gym was like my saving grace, because I could just return back to the gym and get into a good program to strengthen myself through diet and exercise and structure. So I had gotten an opportunity to get on a fishing boat through one of my friends. So I had gone onto a gill netting boat out of Hampton Harbor, and it was another opportunity for me to prove myself. And it was a tough job right up my alley because I'm tough. And, at the time I thought that, physical, dangerous jobs was, it filled that hole.
Yeah.
And, I trained for the next 2 years to be the best fisherman I could. And it was one of the toughest experiences, physically, mentally, to pull in 3 miles of net and rope a day and to organize, cut and gut 30,000 pounds of fish, a day, 7 days a week. And, my captain of the boat was like the former captain of the Hampton Police. So I looked up to him as a role model, because without my dad being a real male role model in my life that I looked up to, I would look up to any other man that had good qualities.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving forward after towards the end of the second season, I had gone back into opioids, and within 2 months, I was driving on the highway back from picking up drugs, and I was driving 85 miles per hour with the flow of traffic in the fast lane. And all of a sudden I closed my eyes for a second and I opened them up to an emergency roadside barrel or cone flag that was lodged underneath my front left tire. And at that point, I knew I was losing control of this vehicle, and it was either swerve into traffic or swerve off the road. So I chose to swerve off the road and avoid traffic. And as I'm barreling down the embankment, I just see this tree coming. And at that point, I just let go of the wheel and like took a breath and just accepted that I've lived a good life. And if I die, I die. And, at 22 years old, I hit that tree and my head went through the windshield. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. I just sat back down in my seat, and I had gotten out of my car and had my sister come pick me up and walked away with just a couple scratches. And I didn't know then, but I do know now that it was God that saved me.
Yeah. You're an angel sitting on you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was God. Yeah. I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed to be here. I'm so blessed to be alive.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, shortly after that was an intervention by my family, and they had given me the option to go to rehab or to be excluded from the family. So at first I chose to be excluded, but shortly thereafter I chose to go to rehab in California. And there was a rehab in Venice Beach, California. And growing up, bodybuilding, I wanted to go to the mecca of bodybuilding. I wanted to go to Venice Beach, and here I was. I had found myself in rehab, one of the only private pay people there. There was one other person, and his family was involved in like major movies like Star Wars, and the other people there were parolees from prison. And it was a culture shock, and I excelled because I wanted to get clean and I wanted to get sober and I wanted to heal. And this started a movement for me to find healing, and being aware of childhood trauma at that time. I started healing the relationship with my mother. I started healing the relationships with my family and starting a journey of healing. And, I went from commercial fishing to getting my personal training certification to fine dining catering, butler service in Beverly Hills and Bel Air, and being the assistant manager of LA Fitness, and really finding a new purpose and reinventing myself in California. And I said to myself I would give it about a year to stay sober before I'd gotten a medical marijuana card. Within a couple years, everything was going well. I had different jobs. I was working as a bar back, working at the gym, doing fine dining catering, other jobs, and everything was going well. And one night I had decided that I was going to find opioids again. And I just remember waking up on my bathroom floor to my roommates and to the Hollywood Fire Department. I had overdosed. I was asked to leave my apartment, so I had moved into my best friend's apartment. He put me on his couch, and I maintained my job at the bar. At this point, I had lost interest in the gym and the things that made me happy and the things that kept me grounded.
Yeah.
I was concerned with work and money. I had found a nice girlfriend, and a few months go by, and I decided to find more narcotics. And I just remember being dragged out of the bathtub, and I had overdosed again on cocaine. So at that point, I just left. I had left California. My dad had retired at 72, and he bought a small sailboat, sold the condo, and we sailed the East Coast, and I felt comfortable with all my fishing experience that I could captain this sailboat down to Florida with him, because he had not sailed for 50 years. And
Yeah.
So we're halfway to Florida. We're like 30 miles off the coast of Georgia. And I let my dad take over for the first day, and he crashed us into a shrimp boat. And it was like one of those great feats of strength where I picked up the mast off the shrimp boat and laid it down onto the sailboat. I mean, this mast was like 1,200 pounds, but it's just so amazing what the body can do. I'm so fascinated, especially with all the physical and mental challenges that I've gone through in my life. That I think that's a really interesting story to tell, lifting that mast off the shrimp boat. So eventually I got to Florida. I bought a car and drove back to New Hampshire. Within a couple weeks, I was using drugs again. And within a couple weeks, I was hitting rock bottom, and I knew it. So I had moved to Lebanon, New Hampshire with an ex-girlfriend. And I had gotten a really good job in a brand new 2016 5500 Freightliner flatbed tow truck. And for the next 3 years, on call, 7/24, I was busy doing emergency roadside and local and long distance towing out of pretty much the Dartmouth Hitchcock campus.
Yeah.
And it was exciting and it was fulfilling, and I felt empowered being like the third in line in emergency responses to roadside collisions and towing. And, I felt of service, towing people around and meeting them. And it filled a lot of voids for me.
How long were you able to maintain being clean and living that life?
At that point, I was put on a maintenance medication, Suboxone.
Yeah.
And I did well with that.
So when did the bottom fall out?
Well, the bottom started to fall out. I had met what seemed like the hottest girl around on Tinder within 50 miles. I met this girl, and she said she was from Rhode Island. And after our first date, she had broken down to me and said, "Brandon, this has been just the best date. I am so alone. I am scared. I'm on the run from the Hells Angels." She was running from a life of escorting, and I was in shock. But at that point, I was so willing to help her, helping, being of service for others in any way that I could, gave me and gives me satisfaction. Doing service for others, being service for my country, being service of any way is important, especially in my life now, but mostly healthy ways.
Yeah.
I definitely can't fix anyone.
Right.
I couldn't even fix myself until I wanted to.
Right.
But our relationship was very toxic, and she would have these outbursts of violence, and she would hit me. She once put a cigarette out of my face, and I just remember walking into the shop where my tow truck was, and I would make excuses for the bruises on my face and the scratches and say, well, it's, she's just having a hard time, and, I love her. And I had no idea the profound effects of domestic violence, and, never thought that I would let someone that I love hit me and hurt me. But it only got worse. So after like the third year of towing, and after like almost the second year of being with her, one night after a fight, I packed my car and I just left for Manhattan where my friend was and started partying again. And my mother reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to come out to Arizona, Sedona, and I thought it would be a great way for me to continue the relationship with my mother and the bond with her, and also another place for me to start over and to reinvent myself. So I found a great job as the assistant manager of a gym. About 6 months into it, I had met another girl. I sought out a girl, any girl, that would show me love and validation. And this girl was using methamphetamine. And after a weekend of using with her, I had returned to work and to my mother's house, and everyone was just like shocked to see me in the state that I was, after using methamphetamine.
Right.
So my mother had asked me to leave, and I just the choices and decisions in my life this time is understandable.
But still, as a little child inside of you, like, doesn't matter. It's like, Mom, I need you
Yeah.
now.
I was seeking the original abandonment from any person, job, workout, um, new place. I was seeking anything external to fill that original childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And it just had manifested in so many different ways that it just carried throughout my life the same behavioral patterns, me reaching towards any new place or new job or new external validation.
So at this point, you leave Arizona, you go back to New Hampshire, right?
Yeah, go back to New Hampshire, and there's my old fishing buddy. He's running his own boat now, so I started fishing with him, and some time goes by where I'm jumping from boat to boat, from Gloucester to Portland, Maine, and jumping on different boats. Really, life was unmanageable with no direction. My mental illness and my dis-ease was just growing and compounding. After almost 2 years of fishing with my friend and using drugs every day with him, he had decided with his girlfriend and him that he was going to go to rehab. And I thought that was good for him. I remember dropping him off at detox, and he was calling me up, begging for me to come get him. And I just thought it was best that I leave him and his girlfriend alone so they can figure this next chapter for him out. And about a month later, he had left treatment, and he had called me and asked me if I wanted to come down to the boat to party. And I told him, no, I can't, man. I really can't. They had found his body 3 days later. He had passed out and cracked his head open on his boat. And I, apart from the ex-girlfriends and the other people in my life that had passed away from substance abuse and overdoses, I could count on all fingers and toes on and more of how many kids from my generation had passed away from opioids. I think New Hampshire was leading in opioid overdoses in 2017.
Yeah, we have a lot of mutual friends, mutual acquaintances that had passed.
Yeah. So, I talked to a friend and an ex-girlfriend who was sober, and she had advised me to move to Portland, Maine, where I moved into a 12-step based sober living house. And, I got a job. I was always really good at getting jobs, always cleaned up really nice. And, generally I believe I'm a good person. So I never really had to do anything criminal for my drug use. I'd always just worked very hard for all of it. And, if I was ever back in full-on addiction, I could turn myself into a detox and get help immediately.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that I was able to do that. So, moving into the 12-step based house, I was connected with a sponsor. It was difficult for me to go through this 12-step process because my entire youth, since getting arrested in 8th grade for that dance that I was drinking at, I was court ordered to go to AA. And, after going to many AA meetings and NA meetings throughout the years and throughout my entire recovery processes, I had always, like a buffet style, I had always wanted to choose which recovery method that I had wanted. So here I am, taking a fearless and moral inventory of myself, of the people, places, and things, and the traumas and all the shame, pain, and guilt put down on paper. I had shared that fourth step with my sponsor and to the God of my understanding. And I'll never forget, it was the freest and the most peace I have ever found before then. Sitting at the Deering Oaks Park and just looking out into the water after sharing this fourth step. I had never found a peace like that before. I thought I was cured. I still didn't really have a good idea of who God was to me, but I always knew that there was a God. I had only really prayed to him in times like in the backseat of cop cars or very sick in rehabs, like begging God to just get me out of it this time, and I promise I'll follow a narrow path. So shortly after that, I moved out and moved into a friend's house, and as soon as I got there, he had pulled out more narcotics, hitting rock bottom again so fast. I went back to sober living, this time in Southern Maine, and I had managed to stay clean and sober for 2.5 years. So, I got a certification in recovery coach, and, I started building construction and, had all the tools, new truck, new car, all the external things. I moved out and got an apartment and met another girl shortly after that, who was again broken and was suffering from alcoholism. And with all my experience, I thought that I could help her or save her. It was a very toxic relationship. She would disappear and leaving me feeling abandoned and alone, and which only brought me back to what gave me absolute peace, or what I thought was peace, but felt like I was safe, and that was returning to narcotics. So I found myself in a parking lot at a parking ride in Portland, and my sister had called and said, "Well, Brandon, why don't you finally try ibogaine, plant medicine?"
All right, so now you decide to take the leap to try the ibogaine, try the plant medicine route for healing, and that's a path that I've been down, and I know the profound healing that can come from it. But I also know that if not handled right, and if integration isn't correct and support isn't correct, that it can kind of go down a dark path.
Yes. So I had profound visions on ibogaine, and I knew of its healing properties, that it could heal neural pathways, and it could take people out of physical and mental addiction. And after that ibogaine experience, I had tried another plant medicine called Bufo aloe and it was an incredible experience, to where it brought me to all the traumas throughout my life, like a movie reel. And eventually, after seeing everything the way it really was, or the way I processed everything, it had brought me to a place where I had to find forgiveness for myself. And I believe I spoke with God. It may have been God, I'm not sure, but I was told that I don't need to be so hard on myself, and I don't need to prove anything to anyone, and that at the end of my life, the only thing that matters is love. And shortly after that, I cried for 3 days. I couldn't understand what was happening. You know, I couldn't process the things that were happening, that had happened, and having those visions was very strong. And I did not want to return back to life in New England. So I just thought that I would move to Mexico and stay at this resort, this place where they would perform medicine. So returning back home, I had moved back into sober living, and I was continuing the relationship with this woman. And after a pretty heavy 3 years in this toxic relationship, she found out she was pregnant, and going back and forth with aborting the baby or not, she decided that she was going to keep it. So, and I had always wanted a family of my own. I had always wanted to be the father that I had never been. My son was born on July 30th. And just my whole world just exploded with love, and just holding my son for the first time. I'll never forget. For the first time, I had actually felt like a real purpose, and I'd felt love, true love. I felt, and my son, and I was going to take care of my son and take care of my son's mother, and everything was going to be great. And it comes with its own challenges. Shortly after Arthur was born, I had worked another 12-step program, and to me, it had finally clicked that it was God that had brought me here to where I am now and where I was then. That God had to bring me through those tough moments. God had to show me what I needed to see so I could become aware of how I was selfish and self-centered and egotistical, and he had to show me this harder path so I could find acceptance in hardships as a pathway to peace. And through the 12 steps and God, being aware of my character defects and making the amends to people I've hurt, to my family, this process was a way for me to practically apply the word of God and to do his will, and wanting to go deeper into where the 12 steps originated from, directly from the Bible. So I've been attending church for almost the past 3 years, and there have been just so many coincidences and synchronicities and chances at life again. I can no longer deny that there is a power greater than myself. It is Jesus that has made the ultimate sacrifice and died on the cross for me, and to take my sins and to allow me to find there's no as soon as I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior and being saved, there is, from Romans, there is no condemnation in Jesus. And through finding spirituality and in Christianity, it is the truth and the way of the life. I am able to lean into God and lean into the Word so I can have a structured plan.
Just a pathway for freedom, a pathway for forgiveness, a playbook to walk away in life.
Yes.
And I know there's still battles. You're still struggling. You've had instances in the past 3 years where, there's been a slip up here and there, but able to get back on track. And I know that you're going through some hardship right now with, trying to ensure that you have enough time with Arthur and making sure that legally you have those rights. So you're still going through these challenges, but you have God and you have Christ who's with you every day.
Yes.
And I know coming in here, one of your biggest things was you still carry that unforgiveness of yourself. And I hope that the time here in the last few days, God has been able to reveal himself to you to let you know that you are forgiven and you need to let that go because you are clean and you are clear and you are a loved child of God and he has amazing things for you.
Yes. Coming here, looking for God to reveal forgiveness in my heart for myself and looking for God to reveal love for myself so I can forgive others and so I can love others truly. Finding love and forgiveness for myself, I am then able to love others and realizing that I have that in me and knowing that if I just continue to do the next right thing and to take life as it comes and finding acceptance and forgiveness for myself and loving myself, that I can be the best father, the best brother, the best employee, just the best friend and loving human being that I can be.
The best you for you.
Yes.
The best you for you because it starts with you. It starts with that love for yourself, that acceptance of yourself. Brother, I want to thank you so much for your vulnerability for this. I know you were so nervous about this, about getting your story out, and you did an amazing job. I'm so grateful for you to share this, and I know that this is going to make impact, and you know that God has his hand on you, and he has put you through these things because he has a purpose on your life to help others, and I know that. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, Brad.
Till next time, guys.
This story ends today, but yours is still waiting to be told. You're not alone in this walk in life. If this hits you, share it with someone that needs it. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Find me at Brad B. Rowe at Instagram. And if you're ready to step into the front row of your life, whether it be the fellowship, the foundry, coaching, or support the ministry, you can find it all at frontrow.co. I'll see you next week.